The Egyptian pyramids, or pyramids of Giza, are the most famous ancient architectural structures. They are the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and to this day remain one of the most visited tourist attractions in the world. Despite this, there are still many mysteries surrounding the pyramids that still yet to be explored. Let's talk about them. Many people who have studied the great Egyptian works of art and monuments of the ancient past have a question. How did people of that time manage to cut massive, heavy, thick stones and rocks with the same ease with which we cut butter today? Even the largest construction companies in the world could hardly replicate the great monuments of Egypt. Nevertheless, it is a common theory that the ancient Egyptians created them using only the simplest of hand tools. However, we are not so sure about this. Perhaps they had powerful saws. The clearest indication of this is the granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The marks at the bottom of the tomb could only have been left by a saw, and it had to be a very large tool. It is impossible to say with certainty what teeth the saw had, but it is hardly possible to argue with the clear evidence that the saw was used after all. What happened to the stone cutting technique of the ancient Egyptians? And why have we never found any modern traces of this technology? We could make a whole movie about the mysteries of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt if we wanted to. It's 4,500 years old, and we still can't figure out how it was built in the first place. That fact alone makes it worthy of inclusion in this video. But there is another mystery about the pyramid that only came to light in 2017. Using sophisticated scanning technology, archaeologists have discovered 2 large cavities in the pyramid structure, and they have no idea what's hiding in them. They may be nothing more than service tunnels used in the construction of the building, or they may contain previously undiscovered tombs. One of the voids is 30 meters long and is shaped like the Great Gallery, which lies just below it. It would be possible that this empty space was included in the construction project to reduce the weight of the rock over the Great Gallery and prevent it from collapsing. But it would be nice to be sure. Apparently, the voids don't have any passageways leading directly to them, so getting to them won't be easy. Scientists are currently developing new robotic walkers that could help them in this endeavor. We just mentioned that the Great Pyramid of Giza is 4,500 years old, but how sure can we be? Leading historians claim that the pyramids of Giza were built in 85 years, between 2589 and 2589 and 2504 BD. However, this may be an erroneous fact. This information comes from radiocarbon dating done in 1984 on material found in and around the pyramids. At that time, we did not know as much about radiocarbon dating as we do now. The results of further studies in 1994 and 1995 showed that the 1984 data could be distorted by more than 2 centuries, which means that the pyramids are 200 years younger. This is important because it means that the pyramid of Senussertsi II was not built until a century after his death. But there is another difficulty here. The fact is that radiocarbon dates are often determined from wood, and the Egyptians had a custom to use wood repeatedly. Therefore, the wood samples taken in and around the pyramids may have been previously used. History textbooks still say that 4,500 years is approximately the exact age of the pyramids, but it is quite possible that they were built 5 centuries earlier. We have already considered the possibility of voids and anomalies in the Great Pyramids of Giza. Here is the clearest evidence yet that these spaces may be secret chambers. In September 2020, researchers discovered 2 secret doors hidden inside the pyramid. They are located at the end of a pair of narrow tunnels that stretch from the north and south walls of the Queen's Chamber inside the pyramid and then rest against stone blocks before reaching the outer walls. The tunnels have insufficient space for human exploration, so the researchers used a robot which took photographs of a small stone door with 2 brass knobs attached to it. The same robot also took pictures of faded red hieroglyphs painted on the wall. The hieroglyphs are roughly drawn, almost like graffiti, so it is possible that they were marks left by the stonemasons who built the pyramids. These shafts could have been used for ventilation as they do not face the outside of the pyramid, but they are, of course, too small for a person to move freely in them. The construction of the door implies that there is something behind it worth protecting. What might that be? And here's an idea you've probably heard before. In fact, this theory has been repeated so many times that people believe it to be true, even though the evidence on which it is based is inconclusive at best. In the 1980s, Egyptologist Robert Bauval claimed that the 3 pyramids of the Giza complex matched perfectly with the stars that make up the belt of the constellation Orion in the night sky. He followed this up with a book titled Orion Mystery, which he published in 1995. The book became a New York Times bestseller, and the idea took root in people's minds. The problem is that the whole concept is a bit dubious. You can't make the pyramids line up with Orion's belt unless you flip one or the other. Of course, if the Egyptians had wanted to reflect them, the position of the stars, they would have arranged them so that this inversion would not have been necessary. Second, all 3 pyramids were built at different times. There is no evidence that the 3rd pyramid was planned when the 1st pyramid was built. Thirdly, the position of stars in the sky varies over the millennia. The stars of Orion's belt do not look the same now as they did 4,500 years ago. As impressive as the pyramids look today, they looked even more spectacular when they were first built. After being exposed to the elements for over 4,000 years, their exterior surfaces became a bit rough and lumpy. At the time of their completion, however, they had stunning, shining, gleaming facades that made them look almost like glass. According to Jacqueline Williamson, an Egyptologist at Harvard University, the facing stones that made up the outer facades of the pyramids were polished to a shine using abrasive materials such as fine sand, sandstone, and even bricks. At the height of the day, when the sun was high in the sky, the pyramids seemed to glow, claims the researcher. Williamson is 100% confident in her conclusions and is convinced that the time, effort, and care put into the polishing process means that the skill of the builders who worked on the pyramids was even greater than we realize. As for what happened to those shiny facades, they naturally faded and crumbled over time. Some of the facing stones were long ago removed for use in other building projects, which undoubtedly accelerated the pyramid's descent. We know from Egyptian historical records that the Benben stone supposedly possessed supernatural properties. It was found in the Temple of Ra at Heliopolis and was the first place on which the sun's rays fell each morning. The original stone has long since been lost, but it influenced the design of several sculptures and statues that still exist in Egypt today, including the capstones of the famous pyramids. It is believed that the stones symbolized the phoenix, an important creature in Egyptian mythology because of its ability to survive death and return to life. Some historians believe that Benben embodies the seed of the phoenix because in the language used at the time, the temple was built raw thousands of years ago. The word meant fertilization. One legend says that Benben is a hill that emerged from the primary waters of Noon when the great god Adam was creating the world. If you have ever heard references to the Stone of Destiny in folklore, they were references to this mystical stone. Nowadays, it is forbidden to climb the Egyptian pyramids, but in the late 19th century, there were no such rules. Thus, the British inventor and explorer Sir William Symonds once decided to climb to the top of the Pyramid of Cheops. When he got there, he was disturbed by a tingling sensation emanating from his fingertips and spreading through his hands. A few minutes later, he took a sip of wine from a metal mug and received an electric shock the moment his lips touched its edge. Rumor has it that the pyramid somehow generates energy ever since. If this is true, we may be able to figure out how it happens. Under the Giza plateau, there are water channels through which water flows in large volumes. This flow generates piezoelectricity, which can then be directed to the top of the pyramid. Many French theorists have speculated that the pyramids were actually power plants, but as far as we know, the Egyptians knew nothing about electricity. It is hard to imagine that they planned to run piezoelectricity through their mighty monument, even if they understood that there was an energy source in it. But amazingly, this system seems to work quite well. Speaking of bizarre theories about pyramids, one may recall the 2016 US presidential election, where Ben Carson was the Republican candidate. Carson held the unusual theory that the pyramids were nothing more than huge granaries. Not only that, he believed that the pyramids were built by the biblical figure Joseph. Carson is a Christian religious fundamentalist with rather strange ideas about many things, but in this case, he is badly mistaken. His version is based on a passage in Genesis where it says that God told Joseph to gather all the food for the coming favorable years and to put the corn under Pharaoh's hands, letting him store the food in the cities. Note the plural, cities, not towns. For this interpretation to be correct, the pyramids must be located in many more cities. Moreover, none of the pyramids were found. Traces of grain, which is impossible if the buildings were once full of grain supplies. The last nail in the coffin of this theory is that the internal dimensions of the pyramids are completely unsuitable for grain storage. Perhaps there is no greater mystery in Egypt than the Serapeum at Saqqara. That is the name of the collection of 24 black 100-ton granite sarcophagi hidden on the hillside south of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It appears that the tombs were placed in their present location about 3,300 years ago, during the reign of the legendary Pharaoh Ramses. Some of the boxes have been opened, and in the remains of the bowls of the cult of Apis were discovered. Bowls were sacred to the ancient Egyptians, but they were not usually buried with such honors. One of the most controversial theories about the construction of the sarcophagi and their purpose is that they were used for the fermentation process, which created enough pressure in the sarcophagi to produce a glow-in-the-dark tunnels. In other words, it may have been a primitive but amazing form of illumination. Most Egyptologists deny this idea, but they have no better explanation. If the ancient Egyptians were able to create a lighting system from the gases of decomposing bowls, their abilities are even more amazing than we think. There is a widespread theory that there was once a fourth pyramid on the Giza plateau. No archaeological evidence of this supposed fourth pyramid could be found for a very long time, but perhaps this mysterious staircase is the first sign of its existence. The staircase goes down beneath the desert sands and may once have been located in the basement of the missing pyramid. It is an impressive piece of engineering. The staircase leads straight down through several meters of limestone and leads to a hidden underground world beneath the plateau that was unknown until 2018. Access to the plateau is severely restricted because the staircase is on land belonging to the army. But a few lucky archaeologists have managed to get permission to enter under supervision. Surprisingly, the lowest step is almost 40 meters underground and filled with water. The underground area is full of meticulously carved niches in which are installed sarcophagi of black basalt and granite. The sarcophagi are open so obviously someone raided these tombs in the distant past. The ancient writer Herodotus once told us that the Egyptian priests created underground chambers when building Memphis, and apparently this was also practiced at Giza. There seems to be a whole secret city under the plateau. And that's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to rate it, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell. For me, your activity is the best reward. Thanks for your attention. See you soon. Bye.